Welcome back. I'm Dr. Cheek and I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. And at this point in life, I'm pretty sure you've heard from a mental health guru or a relationship guru or someone who somehow made it to 30 now feels like they're a life guru, that communication is the key. And in that statement is communication is the key to successful relationships, successful interactions, successful conversations. However, communicating simply for the sake of communicating does not necessarily translate into being the key to success in relationships or anything else. There are certain key elements that need to be included in that communication in order for that communication to be effective. So, have you ever had a conversation with someone who talked for 2 to 20 minutes and after they were done talking, you had absolutely no clue what was said, the message that they were trying to get across, the point they were trying to make, the purpose of that conversation, or what statement they were trying to make by engaging in that conversation? If you have, chances are you've run into someone who ineffectively communicates, because simply being able to talk and say a lot of things does not necessarily mean you are communicating effectively, and chances are that will not be the key to successful communications. So these 3 elements are necessary in order for you to communicate effectively. And that's for you to have the ability to be able to verbalize what you're trying to communicate, understanding how you're communicating, and deciding or determining who you're communicating to. So when we focus on what you're communicating, it's being able to answer those 4 W questions and that 1 H question. Who, what, where, when, and how. And I say sometimes why, and I only say sometimes why because there's not always an explanation needed. However, if someone were to ask you why, you should have a reason as to why you're communicating or the reason for what you're saying. So who, what, where, when, and how when we're communicating is being very clear and concise about your message and what you're trying to get across. And what that looks like is you walk away from or step away from making vague statements, like the vague statement of, you hurt my feelings. That's vague. That could mean anything. When we answer the who, what, where, when, and how, that could look like when you behave in this way, or when you said this statement to me, it made me feel this way, and that hurt my feelings. So that in that moment communicates to a person the who, what, where, when, and how. That gives them all the information they need to understand not only that your feelings were hurt, but the behaviors or the words that they said that hurt your feelings and what it did to you in those moments that made you feel the way you were feeling in those moments. So that's when we're communicating. We're clear about what we're communicating and we're concise with what we're communicating. It doesn't require a lot of words and it's very simple. Who, what, where, when, and how. Also, along those same lines is how we're communicating. And I'm not necessarily focusing on the tone we're using. Although tone does matter in certain cases, it's not necessarily the tone. It's 3 ways that we tend to communicate. So we either are passive in our communications, we're aggressive in our communications, or we're assertive in our communications. Passive communication simply means that I'm not being very clear about the message I'm trying to convey. I'm also trying to make sure I say something in a way that's not hurting your feelings, but is also not making it very clear to you that something happened. Although it's hurt me and damaged me in some way, I'm trying to make sure that I'm saying this to you in a way that you don't feel responsible for your behaviors. But at the same time, I'm trying to convey a message that something happened. It's not clear what happened. It's not clear how it affected me. It's not clear about what you've done that affected me, but it's just passive. You know, an example of that would sound like certain things that you do sometimes can cause a negative effect to others. That's a passive communication because it actually is not really clearly directed to anyone. It's just a general state. Now, we also have aggressive communication. Aggressive communication is communication that sometimes have a more aggressive tone, but it also means that we're saying things in a hurtful way. We're trying to purposely be demeaning. We're trying to purposely cause some level of harm to someone, and we're trying to inflict with our words the same level of pain or hurt that we feel like someone has done in either their words or their behaviors. And we sometimes use those extreme statements like always or never. So an example of an aggressive communication would look like, I don't know why you feel like you need to talk to me this way all the time. You're just mean and you're just dominating. You don't really care how I feel. That's aggressive communication because you are now name calling. You're also not really being clear about what affected you, but in those moments, you're trying to make sure you say something that has the same level of hurt that you feel like you're feeling in those moments. And at the same time, it typically causes people to become defensive. People on the other side of aggressive communications tend to become defensive because they feel attacked. Aggressive communication can feel like an attack to another person because it's not really trying to communicate in those moments your own internalized experiences. It's trying to give your internalized experiences to someone else. So that's aggressive communication. Now we have assertive communication. And assertive communication is exactly that. You are asserting what you feel, how it made you feel, what happened, and how, in most cases, people can correct it. So what this looks like is when you behaved this way, or when you said this statement, it made me feel this way, and that hurt my feelings. In the future, could you avoid doing A, B, or C, or could you not say these things because they are hurtful to me in these ways? That's assertive communication. It's simply saying how I felt, what happened, how it felt for me, and how you can correct it in the future. That's assertive communication. And I know sometimes when I say this, it's put in psychological terms and that doesn't feel comfortable. And I always tell people to put it in your own words, because saying it in my psychology words does not always feel genuine and it is not always true to you. So there is a way that you can say things assertively in your own word that does not sound like a textbook I feel statement. So it's as much as you possibly can, try to put the statement in your own words, so it sounds like it's genuinely coming from you. Now lastly is who you're communicating to. Now we all have the ability to communicate, and you can communicate effectively. You can talk as eloquently and as assertively as possible. And if you're talking to someone who does not have a desire to hear you, listen to you, or understand where you're coming from, you can effectively communicate until you're blue in the face, and nothing about your interactions with this person will change because they have no desire to hear, listen, or understand from your perspective. And they're going to continue to behave how they would like to behave. So make sure that who you're communicating to is someone who wants to or has the desire to hear you and understand you. Or in those moments, you are communicating into a void, and that never feels comfortable. And in those moments, you have to decide if I'm just going to accept this person the way they are, or am I going to keep trying to communicate these things that they have no desire to understand or hear. You get to decide whether you want to continue to have this person be a part of your space and with the behaviors that they're going to continue to display. So in order for communication to be key, it needs those elements. You need to be able to communicate concisely what you're trying to say. You need to be able to say it in a way that's assertive and not hurtful. And you need to make sure that who you're communicating has a desire to understand and hear what you're saying. So communication is key, but only when it's effective. Rarely is communication going to result in any level of change or successful interactions with others if it's ineffective. So I hope you've learned something from listening to this video today. Any questions or concerns or any topics you'd like me to cover, put them down in the comment section. And thank you for taking the time to listen, and I'll be seeing you again very soon. Thank you.